Welcome back to the Weekly Driver podcast. My name is James Rea. I'm an automotive columnist for Bay Area News Group. My colleague and friend is Bruce Aldrich. Just got back late last night from the first few days of Classic Car Week, Monterey Auto Week, all encompassing everything about automotive, the automotive world. And I had a chance to meet David Laws. We had coffee over in fun old coffee shop, the Coffee Works in Pacific Grove, and we talked about the Pacific Grove Rotary Concours Auto Rally, which will be held on Friday, August 16th, I believe. And David is very involved with Rotary, and he is pretty much in charge of the whole shebang. So, David, thanks for taking the time, and welcome to the Weekly Driver podcast.
Well, thank you, James. I appreciate the opportunity to tell you about our event.
Great. Can you give us a quick overview? I know, as we discussed yesterday, it's in its 25th year. The mark is Cobra, and you were telling me originally that Carroll Shelby was a guest, and so you're celebrating 25 years of this wonderful event. Give us a good overview of it, if you would.
Sure, yeah. The Auto Rally was actually conceived, I think, in 1994 by then Mayor Jeannie Byrne, to support the Pacific Grove Youth Center. They established the rally as a fundraiser for the Youth Center. Actually had the first rally in 1995, and as you pointed out, the first rally was remembered and notable for the presence of Carroll Shelby, who turned up and was an honored guest, and of course the Cobra was the mark of the year. And in honor of the 25th anniversary of that first event, we established Cobra as the mark for this year's event.
Terrific.
Cobra's a great one to have. Do you have many or any real Cobras?
We will see on the day. Each year we take a photograph that we use on posters and promotion for the event of whatever that year's mark is posed in front of one of the historic buildings in town. And this year we did get 4 Cobra owners who were gracious enough to turn up early one morning for the photograph. And I'm looking at them, and of the 4, one is a 1965 Cobra Mark III Super Performance, and another is a 289 Mark II Cobra that was actually invoiced by Shelby to a store in Oregon in 1963. That's owned by Bob Walker. The 2 others shown on the poster this year were one is a replica, and the other one is a later model. So hopefully one of those will be there. I can't guarantee that at this point.
I'm looking at the poster as you are, and yeah, those are some nice looking Cobras there.
I think over in Carmel yesterday, I walked over to the Concours on the Avenue, and I walked down there to talk to somebody who has a Metropolitan Nash, and on the way back I saw the 65 Cobra that you're speaking of. I believe it was, because it has 65 Cobra on the license plate, dark blue, beautiful car, and I took some shots of it. It was parked in somebody's driveway, so maybe it's the same owner.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Tell us about car rallies in general. People might not be familiar with what a car rally is, and yours is directed at vintage cars, correct?
Actually, we are very welcoming to all car enthusiasts. We have an incredible range of vehicles, from very early models of vehicles up to, I think, a couple of Teslas began to creep in late last year,
yes.
Very early model Teslas. And also some kind of unique vehicles. Granite Rock is always a big supporter of the rally. They have a restored kind of pickup truck in the 1920s, and a beautifully restored 1950s dump truck that actually doesn't go in the rally, but always appears as part of the Concours event.
As an honored guest, yeah.
As an honored guest, absolutely. Yes. And in our case, the way the event works, downtown Pacific Grove is a very attractive historic district with a very wide main street for a town of this size. and we are allowed to close off 4, 5, maybe 6 blocks. And people who want to participate in the Concours will register, and as they arrive, they're placed along each side of the street, and we can get about 200 vehicles into the space allowed, and then they'll be there from perhaps midday until about 4:30 in the afternoon as the area gradually fills up. And spectators are allowed to wander around, and the drivers wander around, sit with their cars. It's really sort of a wonderful social event for car buffs, and we get many, many people who turn up year after year. And then about 4:30, the police give instructions on basically how to behave on a rally.
I love it.
No gunning
That's
of the
great.
vehicle and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they're guided out onto the ocean front, and then typically most of the people who participate in the Concours also take the rally drive, as is included as part of it, drive around past the lighthouse, and then enter into Pebble Beach at the Pebble Beach gate, and drive around 17-mile drive, almost as far as the lodge, turn back and come back to Pacific Grove again. And then again, many of those people then participate in a kind of a barbecue dinner that's held in the historic Chautauqua Hall here.
For people who
there's
don't,
a lot of aspects to it.
excuse me.
Just a lot of fun.
Yes, for people who don't know, I mean, that's just some incredible views along that 17-mile drive.
It's exactly. It follows the coastline pretty much around the point beyond Cypress Point, and then comes back again into downtown.
I'm just the way you described it. I'm tempted just to, get rid of the schedule that I have and tell my wife I'm going down there again today. It just sounds like a fantastic time on Friday.
We'll squeeze you in.
Yeah, thank you. Question for you. I know that you're involved with a charity part of this, which of course is Rotary. And during our coffee time, I mentioned that I know very little about the Rotary International, and have been fortunate enough and honored to speak a couple times before Rotary groups through the years. And the more I know, the more I like. So what is the Rotary in your area all about, and how long has it been involved, and what does the rally, how does the rally benefit?
Sure, yeah. The Rotary was formed here, I think, about 1947 out of a local service club, and meets regularly once a week at the Inner Spanish Bay, where we have a lot of interesting speakers, and then put quite a lot of effort into raising money for local activities. Rotary's involvement in the Auto Rally sort of began after the Pacific Grove Youth Action was founded by a number of local people. And in fact, I think there were 8 or 10 that met in a coffee shop back in 1994. And 3 of the folks involved then are still involved and are currently still part of Rotary. Jeannie Byrne, David Dormady, and Steve Covell have put a lot of work into this over the years. Rotary started getting involved in a bigger way about 10 years ago, providing volunteers and other efforts along the way. And then about 5 years ago, the original group was disbanded, and Rotary took over the entire running of the event, although many of the volunteers from that original group do continue to contribute. So it's been organized by Rotary for the last 4 or 5 years, and will continue to be for some time to come. And the idea, which was originally just to raise money for local youth charities, has now expanded that other Rotary activities in the area beyond youth, particularly homeless and other projects, are funded. Although I was looking through, last year we dispensed around, I think, about let's say just under $40,000 to local charities.
Fantastic.
And about 60% of that had some involvement with youth in one way or another, either through participation in clinics for the uninsured, high school scholarships, Boy Scouts, third grade dictionaries, local track meet at the school, summer programs, and other activities for kids.
Well, that's
It
great.
seems, and a big chunk of that money, there are other fundraising activities we have in town, but certainly the Auto Rally is by far the most important contributor.
David, you mentioned also yesterday something I didn't realize is that on the surface of it, a bunch of people show up and you get in your car and you go on the 17-mile drive and you have a barbecue and a beautiful day. But you told me this is quite a production with jurisdictions and the rights or the expected rights to go into what you used to go into Carmel or Pebble Beach, and things have changed. And I don't know how much of that you want to share, but it takes quite an effort to what seems like a simple thing to really organize all of this. Is that correct?
Anybody who's involved in an activity like this just knows that you don't just turn up on the day and make it happen. There's a committee of about a dozen or 15 of us that we start to meet once a month in around the beginning of the year, and more frequently as it gets closer and closer to the event. And of course, there are many different aspects. And now there are so many activities. I think there's 40 plus activities organized throughout Car Week on the peninsula now that we have to make sure that we don't overlap and there aren't collisions, and that all the local jurisdictions that need to be involved are there. And in our case, obviously, there's a local town that we have to get permission to use the area. There's the local police that have to provide us with their support. We have to get permission, and very graciously, the Pebble Beach Company allows us to drive through the section of Pebble Beach, through their area. And to make sure all goes well, we typically have a contingent of about a dozen or so highway patrol officers that turn up to escort the cars around the event.
I'm just going to take a wild guess. That's one of their favorite things to do. I'm thinking.
It is. It's
just a wild guess.
I think it's one of the few activities where the highway patrol officers are welcome to town
Right.
and actually get applause from the crowd.
Yes. David, do you know the police would normally charge, and that's a big cost. Do you know, is it when it's a fundraiser, do they give their services for free, or are they charging?
We have to pay whatever the going rate is for highway patrol activities. I know that for sure. In terms of the local police and the local town, is that we guarantee a certain size contribution to town activities out of the money that we raise. So that is considered a donation from us and is included in that number, but obviously it's necessary, and I think we grandfathered into the town as an activity that is worthy of support because of the contribution we make, financial and otherwise.
Sure, and your activity seems to be fairly inexpensive compared to there's so many things that cost so much money.
Well, that's true. If you're going to drive a vehicle, I think the entry fee now is $95 for the driver. If you want the dinner with it, it's $120. And then you can buy additional meals for other folks that ride in your car. But it's tough to get that kind of deal on the peninsula now if you actually want to show your car off. And, of course, for spectators, it's free.
Yes, that's a bargain. People, I'm speaking about the Monterey Peninsula, and you live there, and Bruce and his wife have been many times. We've been to car shows together there. I've been there, hundreds of times and used to live there. And my wife and I have been there many times. But I think for people who haven't been to Carmel, Pebble Beach, Monterey, Pacific Grove in particular, I always call it a modern-day Mayberry. It's stepping back into time. It's a small community with just a tremendous amount of things going on. And, the ocean's right there. You've got historic homes. You've got a downtown area with nice restaurants and pubs. And yesterday, in particular, I was driving through the main drag, and there are those I don't exactly know what you call it. They're kind of Asian-looking light fixtures that are on on the main drag there, and the sun caught it, and it was just the most beautiful morning, just going down the main drag in Pacific Grove.
Oh, well, I mean, yes, we had a heat wave yesterday. It got up to 68 degrees.
Wow,
that's right. No air conditioning on the peninsula, pretty much. And David, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. We talked briefly about it. Your involvement, of course, you have a lot of enthusiasm for it, but do you go in the rally? I forgot to ask you that yesterday. Do you have other responsibilities, and do you own any vintage cars?
I am not a vintage car owner, as we talked yesterday.
Yes.
I love people that are passionate about things, and so I get involved in quite a lot of different activities beyond the car rally and other things in the area. and I do some writing about them as well. But no, I do not own a vintage car, and I have driven around the rally route several times, but not in my own vehicle.
You did mention that your wife is very, you used the word passionate. She's very passionate about her Volvo that she's had for, I don't know, 1 million or 2 miles so far, and she really likes that car, I think you mentioned.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to wrest that vehicle away from her. She's very, very comfortable with it. Yes. About, I don't know what year, maybe about 2000 Volvo station wagon. Sure.
Great.
Well, it'll last a lifetime.
Yeah, that's true.
And if anyone who has a car that they love is welcome to come and join the rally.
That's a nice invitation.
Yeah.
There isn't a difficult test you have to pass other than to love your vehicle and love sharing it with others in the town.
That's
Sure.
perfect.
David, tell us, so you do the drive, and then you get back to another rally point and have a barbecue. What's that all about?
Again, Pacific Grove has a big wooden building that went up in the late 1800s as part of the Chautauqua movement for educating folks in a religious community. It was then. This was basically a Methodist retreat at that time. And part of the barbecue dinner is held in the building, and there are awards given away for various categories of classes in the concours, and the dinner is catered by a local institution, Pacific Grove Market. Charlie Higuera there, who has done this for many, many years, provides the food and allows us at a very reasonable price, which allows us to add a little bit more money to the income we get from the rally. So it's a social evening with a lot of fun, a lot of joking, and a few fancy awards given away.
A little competition then, get some bragging rights.
That's right. Yes,
Who does the judging?
The judging has been managed for many years by a general by the name of Bruce Obink, who moved to the peninsula, I think, about a dozen years ago, and is a very skilled judge, and he has 4 or 5 people helping him. And this will be the last year that Bruce will be doing it, and he is will be training his replacement as we go around this week. So, and there are a lot of different people who have who sort of contribute in various volunteer ways in addition to Bruce Ovink. That's a couple of examples. Will Bullis, a local artist in Carmel Valley for years and years and years, has contributed a cartoon-style painting featuring an anthropomorphic animal, typically driving one of these fast vehicles, that is presented as one of the prizes in the raffle. And of course, there are many other individuals that give their time, even beyond folks in Rotary, who see this as a worthwhile event and want to help it run smoothly.
It sounds like fun.
David, considering that there are, as you mentioned, about 40 events or more than 40 events, and even the 2.5, 3 days I was down there saw an incredible amount of, there's always the Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Porsches and so forth, but some of the unique cars are always there. Through the years that you've been involved, can you remember a car or two that was in the rally that just attracted an awful lot of attention? Not because maybe it was worth $1 million, maybe because it was worth $1,000, or it was one of a kind. Do any real unique cars come to mind?
Oh, well, I mean, some really little unique things, like little three-wheeler Italian coffee dispensing vehicles.
Fantastic. Yeah.
I always loved the Jaguars and the MGs and
Yes.
the early British cars, of course. You judge from my accent.
Yes.
There's typically some beautiful old Rolls, Bentleys, Cords, and probably the biggest contingent we'd have for any one particular group would be the sort of high-end muscle cars from the 60s, the Mustangs and the Camaros and those kinds of vehicles.
Yes. It's I can't imagine that any other area, maybe there are other parts of the country, but whether it's called Classic Car Week or Monterey Auto Week, it's probably now almost 2 weeks now, 10 or 11 days. Any other part of the country, paradise on the Monterey Peninsula, that embraces so many different areas, and that, as we talked yesterday, also there's not really one umbrella organization that kind of oversees the whole umbrella of all of the different niche events, from memorabilia to the Concours d'Elegance to the rally. I did experience yesterday for the first time, and I wanted to know if you've experienced this. Some people don't seem to like Monterey Auto Week. There were a couple of guys, I was parking my car, and a couple of guys were in a hurry, and they were beeping at people, and there are, just seems to be there's a few, I noticed it more this year than any other year, a few people who just don't like what's going on. Has your rally ever experienced a downside? I can't imagine, but I thought I'd ask anyway.
A few people complain, and rightly so, about people gunning their vehicles in town.
Yes.
A few people object to people driving along the ocean front honking too loudly and scaring the sea lions.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
And certainly there's a lot of cars in town. This
Yes.
is probably the bit between this and the U.S. Open and a few other events.
Yes.
This is the time to experience bad traffic in the area.
Yes.
Although we get stuck in very stylish traffic jams. Just the other day, I had a Bugatti in front of me and a Ferrari behind me.
That's,
A little different than 101 in San Jose, I'll tell you.
that's certainly true. Your background, again, getting involved in this, you were successful in business, and you moved to Pacific Grove years ago and stayed.
Yeah, I lived in Silicon Valley making silicon chips for 40-plus years, and then we moved down here full-time about 8 or 9 years ago. And it's just a wonderful community. It's small enough that you can know everybody, yet it's big enough to have the wonderful resources of activities, restaurants, things to do in a beautiful setting. Love it.
We talked yesterday also about this man that I knew about. I don't think you've had time to look into it, but a man named Tad Burness, who wrote, when I first got interested in cars, he had a one-panel cartoon strip, and he would do a line drawing of a Studebaker or a Nash Rambler, or these unique cars, not too many high-end cars. And then he would write a little caption of 100 or so words, and it would appear in about 30 newspapers, including the Monterey Herald and the Sacramento Bee, where I live. And he passed away in Pacific Grove 4 or 5 years ago, and they had a little booth set up during the little car show where they were selling. At that time, he was in hospice, so they were selling T-shirts with his liking on it and some of his cartoons. And he has 10 or 12 books, and his son and daughter were there, I believe. And I'm still, that's one of my goals, is somewhere in Pacific Grove, in the automotive world, I'm going to find out some more about Tad Burness and hopefully, write a story or talk to some of his family members about his syndicated.
I think there surely is a story there. After you mentioned it, I did check quickly, and there was plenty of coverage of his obit and other things on the web. I did look in the telephone directory. I don't see any Burnesses still in town, but of course it doesn't mean a lot these days with everybody having cell phones and things. And I'll check around, see if I can find out any more about his story.
All right. Now going back to...
and talking of stories,
Yes.
there's always kind of lots of stories involved with events like this. We have people who were driven all the way from the East Coast, not just for this event, but this was the spark for the event.
Yes.
We have people that have brought cars from Hawaii, and there's always kind of interesting little distractions along the way. And one typical example that people love to talk about is the bus routes obviously have to be redirected around downtown because the streets are closed. But it's not always obvious to some of the residents that there's no buses running that day. And 1 week, several years ago, there's this little old lady had been standing by the bus stop for an hour or more waiting for the bus, which never came. Finally, she inquired and was advised that, sorry, ma'am, that the buses have been moved. Said, well, how am I going to get home? So somebody picked her up and took her home in one of the Rolls Royces from the Concours.
I love that story.
That's the wonderful
Nice
ride
vintage
home.
Rolls. It made it worth it. That hour wait was worth it.
That's fantastic.
Right. Although every time the story is told. It gets there are 15 people and 15 Bugattis or something, but whatever. There's some essence in the back of the story.
It's the basis of it is true. It probably gets a little embellished, but why not? It's a good story, and I'm sure it happened. That's great. Is there anything else about the rally that we should be aware of in terms of have there ever been any breakdowns of the cars? People have passion about their cars, but all of a sudden, something happens, the engine blows, or you need a tow truck. Those British cars. Good call, Bruce. Anything like that?
I mean, there have been occasionally someone will make a wrong turn and get lost in Pebble Beach and never be seen again. There are other cases where someone makes a wrong turn and sort of causes a traffic jam, which takes a lot of work to sort out.
Yes.
And in the days when the rally used to go right through Pebble Beach and then up Ocean Avenue through Carmel, there were quite a few instances of those older English cars stuck on the hill overheating, causing problems.
Yeah, there you go. That's good.
They didn't take their Jaguar mechanic with them or whatever one has to do with those vehicles.
Right.
And that part has been cut from the rally route now, both because of the cost of going through Carmel is so expensive, and because there are now so many vehicles turning out across
the traffic's
line.
Horrible.
Highway
up there.
1 was just not practical anymore. So.
Well, that's great, David. We want to remind people that there's still time. Hopefully, if they want to get down to the Monterey Peninsula for the Pacific Grove Rally, the Rotary does a great job with it. And there are other events through Sunday. Of course, Classic Car Week, Monterey Auto Week ends with the Concours Elegance, which has always been kind of the granddaddy of everything. But there's so much. I think the memorabilia ends today, but this rally is on Friday. There's just all kinds
car
of things.
auctions.
You could just stand on the street corner basically and watch great cars
It's a
go
car
by.
show
It's
anywhere.
It's a omnipresent car show through Sunday. So, and David, by the way, I told you yesterday you're our 99th guest on the 99th episode. We've had a couple of repeat guests. So thank you for, number one, thanks for reaching out and contacting me. And it was great to have a cup of coffee with you yesterday. And thank you again for being our guest on the Weekly Driver podcast. We appreciate it very much.
Well, I'm honored to be number 99. That's a good number, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk about our event, James, and I look forward to meeting you again down here one day.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank you,
again.
David.
Cheers. Bye-bye now.
Thanks. Bye.